I parked my 2012 Honda Accord between a matte, dark Porsche Cayenne and a pearl white Tesla Model S. Their doors shut with an entitled click. Mine closed quietly, just like me. It had been 10 years since I last set foot inside the Bennett family brownstone in Beacon Hill. 10 years since I walked out without yelling, without a dramatic exit. Just me, a sketchbook, a refurbished laptop, and the wristwatch I still wore today. And tonight, I was 35. I wore a navy wrap dress I found tucked in the back of my Boston apartment closet. No label, no frills, just structure and quiet confidence. I came alone. No +1, no staff, just me. Just Lauren. The heavy oak front door was already ajar. Through it, the polished marble gleamed like always, cold and calculated. I stepped inside. The chandelier over the dining room table still cast its golden glow across 16 chairs, each one pristine, set with crystal stemware and heavy silver cutlery. The scent of veal and reduction sauce lingered. Nothing had changed, except me. At the head of the table sat Sylvia Bennett, my mother, flawless as ever and just as unyielding. Her head turned slowly when she saw me. Then came the smile, the one she used instead of barbed wire. Beautiful. Well, she said loud enough for the servers to hear. The prodigal disappointment returns. Soft chuckles followed. From Malcolm, my older brother, the legal shark with a Harvard tie and a paper-thin heart. From cousin Andrew, Wall Street's favorite volume button. From Lydia, Malcolm's wife, who once told me I'd never amount to much unless I married into it. I stood still, hands calm. Then it came. "You're an embarrassment to this family," my mother said. Clear, cold, loud. No one flinched. Some nodded, others just avoided my eyes. I didn't reply, didn't blink. I walked to the empty chair at the far end of the table and sat down beside a seat no one claimed and a platter no one passed. Across the table, Malcolm raised his glass. "Too high standards," he smirked. I didn't raise mine. Maybe they noticed. Maybe that was the point. I glanced at my wristwatch, still ticking, still mine. And for the first time in years, I wondered. There's a photo tucked somewhere in this brownstone, probably in a crystal frame on the upstairs hallway table. It was taken at Malcolm's Yale graduation. The whole family posed like a society spread. Pastels, pearls, champagne flutes, all smiles and legacy talk. I was in the photo too, just barely off to the side, cropped by distance and intention. I was 22 then. I'd just graduated from NYU with a degree in computer science. Not Ivy League, not applauded. During brunch, I told them about a job offer I received. A junior data analyst role at a cybersecurity subcontractor near DC. Sylvia blinked once. "That's niche," she said. Leonard, my father, didn't even look up from his phone. "You know, Lauren," he murmured, "we could still make some calls. Georgetown Law's summer program has openings." I remember folding my napkin carefully, smiling politely. I didn't argue. The next morning, I left. No goodbyes, no slammed doors, just silence. 2 suitcases, a Greyhound bus ticket from South Station to Brooklyn, and a head full of code no one believed in. That was the beginning of Heretic. It started in a sublet with peeling paint, radiator noise, and coffee that never tasted quite right. I coded on a second-hand MacBook. I pitched to blank Zoom screens, got told no 57 times before one investor, an ex-NSA cryptographer named June, saw something in me my family never had. She handed me $200,000, 0 cents, and a wristwatch, leather band, analog face. "You'll need something to measure time," she said, "not just hours, milestones." I've worn it every day since. When Heretic landed our first DoD contract, I mailed my parents a letter, not for approval, just the facts. 3 weeks later, Sylvia replied, typed, signed, "Please don't attach the Bennett name to something uncertain." No congratulations, no call. I framed that letter. Every collapse, every closed door, every time Heretic climbed $10 million, 0 cents. $100 million, 0 cents. Then $2 billion. $100 million, 0 cents. I reread that letter like scripture. Not to guide me home, but to remind me how far I'd traveled. I didn't return to Boston. Not for birthdays, not for Lydia's twins. Not even when Father had his stroke and Malcolm preached family unity. They never asked me to come back, and I never offered. Until now. Now, sitting at their table, surrounded by monogrammed napkins, measured smirks, and polished silver, I looked across the faces that once told me I would fail. And I remembered. I wasn't here for them. I was here for something quieter, but heavier. Something like closure. Dinner was veal. It always was. Veal over wild mushroom risotto, plated on bone-white china rimmed in gold, the same set Sylvia had shipped from Milan the year I turned 17. I remember, because that was also the year she forgot my birthday. I hadn't touched veal in years. I picked at it in silence. Malcolm was, predictably, in full performance mode, holding court with a story about saving an arbitration deal from the brink of collapse. He waved his fork like a gavel, every word soaked in self-importance. Lydia followed his cue with precision. Youngest partner in firm history, she reminded the room again. Her pride sparkled brighter than her diamond earrings. Across from me, Ethan practically shouted about emerging markets, waving his wine glass as if he were conducting an invisible orchestra. He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, but he was desperate to be heard. Sylvia, poised at the head of the table, kept time like a conductor, smiling, nodding, silently directing the pace. When her eyes finally landed on me, her smile thinned. Still working, in technology, dear. Not tech, not cybersecurity, not even your company. Just working. Nodded, still building systems. That somehow earned me attention. Ethan leaned in. Apps? Crypto? Websites? I could have told them Heritech handles 15% of the federal government's secure cloud architecture. I didn't. Before I could answer, Malcolm cut in. She used to stay up all night with that old Dell desktop, remember? Sylvia added smoothly. We thought it was a phase. Lydia, still dissecting her veal, asked if I had a team, or if I was still doing it all myself. Heritech had over 300 employees now. We'd just opened a Tokyo branch and were prepping a NATO infrastructure bid. I kept it simple. No, I have help. Malcolm smirked. Eventually, everyone needs a real job. The laughter was soft, elegant, and razor-edged. Sylvia stepped in, voice dipped in diplomatic sugar. Lawrence always carved her own path. That word, again. Other. Outlier. Not one of us. Malcolm raised his glass with mock warmth. To the rebels in the family, may they find their way back before it's too late. I didn't raise mine. If you've ever sat quietly at a table where you were underestimated, stick with me. What happens next changes everything. Tap subscribe so you don't miss the moment they finally see who I really am. Instead, I glanced down at my wristwatch, still ticking, still mine. Ethan, ever opportunistic, leaned in again. My firm's expanding into startup investments, he said casually. If you've got a pitch, I could take a look. Always happy to give your little project a shot. He winked. Little project. I met his eyes. It's not little. He laughed, dismissive. Oh yeah? Then how come we've never heard of it? I let the pause breathe. Maybe you weren't listening. The table froze. Lydia let out a sharp, startled laugh. She's got a bite. Sylvia chuckled, her fingers curling around the wine bottle. We're just teasing, darling. It's all in good fun. But it wasn't. It never had been. They just never noticed. Dessert arrived. Fig tartlets, drizzled with lavender honey, and a swirl of creme fraiche. I didn't touch mine. Malcolm launched into a story about depositions in Miami, his voice echoing through the room when a soft knock sounded at the front. Moments later, Jillian appeared, my assistant. Always composed, she only wore black when I asked. Tonight, she wore black. She walked past startled glances and stopped quietly beside me. I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Bennett, she murmured, but the jet is ready. The pilot needs final confirmation for Tokyo. Flight path must be filed within the hour. Lydia dropped her fork. It hit the china with a hollow clink. I didn't flinch. I folded my napkin. Thank you, Jillian. Tell Captain Reyes we'll proceed as planned. Stop over in San Francisco for the board vote. I'll join the call en route. She nodded once and vanished as smoothly as she came. Silence. Not awkward, not confused. Dead silence. The kind that settles like ash when something collapses. Ethan blinked. Malcolm's jaw clenched. Sylvia sat straighter, as if posture alone could hold reality together. Jet? Malcolm finally asked. I dabbed the corner of my mouth. Gulfstream, I said. We use it for intercontinental meetings. Paratech finalized the Tokyo partnership last quarter, I said. Paratech? Ethan repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. My company, I said simply. Sylvia's eyes narrowed. You have a jet? I have a company, I corrected. The jet is just efficient. Malcolm tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. So, what? You saying you're running some kind of real operation now? I reached into my handbag, pulled out my phone, and opened the Bloomberg app. Here, I said, sliding it across the table. Headline. Paratech secures $900.00 BHS contract for national cyber defense infrastructure. Below it, a photo of me taken during our press conference on Capitol Hill. Ethan leaned forward. That's you. I nodded. No fanfare. No elaboration. Sylvia's hand hovered near the phone but never made contact. I saw it tremble, just slightly. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice suddenly fragile. Would it have mattered? I asked calmly. The room stilled. Tartlets untouched. Even the air had gone still. I looked down at my watch. Still ticking. Still mine. Malcolm was the first to speak, or try. His voice had that sharp legal edge, the one he used when rattled in court. He jabbed a finger toward my phone. This could be exaggerated. I tilted my head. You think Bloomberg inflates federal contracts? He looked away. Ethan was still reading, lips moving silently as though the headlines might rearrange into something less staggering. I watched as the numbers began to land. Our government footprint, the valuation, the scale. 5.8 billion, he murmured, like the words hurt to say aloud. No, I said quietly. We crossed 6 last month. Lydia reached for her wine, her fingers trembling. She missed the stem. Sylvia hadn't moved. She sat straighter, as if posture could still claim command, her gaze fixed on the table, on the space where my phone had been. Then she asked, so softly it almost didn't reach me. You built this? Alone? Not alone, I said, just not with any of you. Malcolm gave a dry, brittle laugh that sounded more like cracking glass. He said something about family, about how I should have told them, how they could have helped, how we were blood. But I remembered too well the meeting he'd had with our father when I was 25, the one where he called me a liability and advised they keep my name off the family Christmas newsletter. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. You said I was bad for the Bennett brand. He didn't deny it. Sylvia finally looked up. Families say things they don't mean, she offered. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a folded letter, creased but carefully preserved. I slid it across the table. Her letter, 3 years old, typed, signed, cold. Don't put the Bennett name on anything that might not last. She didn't touch it, just stared. Ethan leaned in then, energized by opportunity. My firm's been exploring tech partnerships, he said. There could be synergy, capital, networks. I let him talk. When he finally paused, I replied, We're not raising. Lydia jumped in next, trying to smooth it over. If we'd known, maybe things would have been different. We could have supported you. I met her eyes. Not angry, just tired. Things were different, I said, just not for me. Sylvia's hand inched toward the letter. She stopped halfway. Her fingers hovered, hesitating, not because of what I'd become, but because reaching for that letter meant admitting she had written it. My phone buzzed. Jillian, right on time. I stood, folded my napkin, set it beside the untouched tartlet. I have a board vote in 6 hours. We're bidding on a NATO contract. I turned to leave. Sylvia's voice caught in the air behind me. Why tonight, Lauren? Why come at all? I paused in the doorway, back still to them, to see if anything had changed. Then I turned, met their faces one last time, and it hasn't. I stepped into the hallway. Behind me, the dining room held its breath, like a stage after the curtain dropped, but before the actors know their scene is done. Then, predictably, the scramble began. Malcolm, always the fastest to pivot, called after me. Lauren, wait, maybe we should talk. Investments. If Heritech's expanding, there could be alignment, a strategic partnership. I turned just enough for him to see my face. You mean now that you believe I exist? I said. Malcolm said nothing. Ethan followed, scrambling. Hey, listen, I've always believed in you. I mean, I knew you were smart, I just didn't realize. You didn't realize I stopped needing your approval years ago, I finished for him. Lydia offered a small, curated smile. If you're ever hiring, I've actually been exploring tech-adjacent fields. I looked at her. Years ago she'd laughed when I tried to explain what I did, told people I worked with screens. Can you name one programming language? I asked. Her mouth opened and closed. She looked away. And then, at last, Sylvia rose. Slowly, each step calculated, more about control than grace. You're angry, she said softly. I understand. But don't let pride close doors that family can help keep open. That word again. You had 9 years to open a door, I said. You chose to paint it shut. Sylvia's voice dipped lower, almost maternal. You're still a Bennett. That means something. It means everything to you, I replied, and nothing to the world I built. She flinched. Just slightly. But I saw it. She reached toward me, maybe to touch my arm, maybe to pull me back in. I stepped away. Don't, I said gently. This isn't a fight. This is a line. My phone buzzed. Jillian, I reached for my coat. No rush, no drama, just finality. At the door I turned one last time. Not to them, but to the house itself. The stillness, the weight. You always thought I left because I failed, I said. But I left because I finally understood I didn't need to pass your tests. I made my own rules. I opened the door. Outside, the car waited. Engine quiet, driver standing. The air was cold, but for the first time in years, it didn't reach me. The wind caught the edge of my coat as I stepped forward. The car was already warm. The driver took my bag wordlessly. Jillian had picked him well. Efficient, invisible, precise. Behind me, the door creaked. It didn't close. They were still watching. Of course they were. Families like mine only know how to chase what they've already lost. I slid into the back seat. Leather. Quiet. Familiar. As the car pulled away from the Bennett brownstone, I didn't look back. Not once. Not at the columns. Not at the stained glass windows. Not at the people who once measured my worth by the dress I wore, the car I drove, or how softly I spoke at dinner. The silence inside the car wasn't tense like theirs. This silence was mine. It was earned. I glanced at my wristwatch. The minute hand moved forward. They still ticking. Still mine. By morning, the messages began. A LinkedIn request from Lydia. A voicemail from Malcolm. We should reconnect. Family synergy has value. An overwritten email from Ethan titled Collaborative Innovation Opportunity. And from Sylvia, a handwritten note, courier delivered. Thick paper, elegant pen, gilt-edged in every line. We should rebuild. You've made us proud. I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to Jillian with 2 words, block list. That evening, a package arrived at the Bennett estate. No card. Inside, Sylvia's old letter, creased, cold. Beside it, a photo. Their dinner table, taken from outside the window. My seat, empty. A single note. I was there. You just didn't see me. You don't have to explain, just leave one word they never said to you. And if you've ever felt unseen, subscribe, because this story isn't over.